All right, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Theory and Theology. On this podcast, we talk a lot about different cultures, theories, spirituality, religions, belief systems. Today I want to talk some about Scientology. Now, I am not a professional on this topic by any means. The only thing I knew probably up until today was literally that I've driven past some buildings or billboards in LA in my past, and that people said Tom Cruise was involved in Scientology. And, I heard some maybe clips, maybe in the past, maybe 2 to 3 clips, and probably max, of him talking about Scientology and some of his background about it. And that's basically as much as I heard. So, anyways, just disclaimer, I'm pretty tired. I was awake late. I was enjoying a lot of videos with content about people who stated to have encountered alien technology, worked with it at Area 51, and people who had stated that they were abducted, were being interviewed and stuff. Mostly Joe Rogan podcast content, and then some other stuff. And then, it kind of interfered with my sleeping, because I was just like thinking about that, and I was like, oh man, this is weird. Not saying that I don't believe it or that I don't think it's fascinating, because I do. It does kind of creep me out. Mostly what creeps me out really is the weird lengths that it seems like some authorities go through to try to silence these types of people, whether that's the government or these job sites, these secret job sites and secret space related things, like NASA's archives and all this kind of stuff. Like how they, seem like they try to really limit the information. So that is more so what bothers me, is like the human aspects of what kind of goes on. I don't know, it's weird. And so yeah, and then this morning I start watching, like, I kept seeing, on YouTube, so there's, usually suggestions, and I'm usually on my phone watching YouTube, right? So I scroll around, so I've been, it's the weekend, so I've been just kind of like scrolling around YouTube, just chilling around the house, other than cooking meals and eating healthy and doing laundry and exercising. I was just basically just watching just a lot of podcasts and stuff, just because that's what I do, and a little bit of sports and stuff. So other than that, I was just like watching all this content, and then I kept coming across this other Joe Rogan clip. Yeah, I'm really tired because I didn't sleep really well. I put on my smart watch, or my I don't know if it's considered a smart watch actually. It's like an athletic watch that like has a sleep tracking type of option. And so I had a feeling I was going to sleep pretty poorly, and so I put that on, and it's always a little bit off. Like, it always says I go to sleep around the time when I was still kind of fully conscious, but laying down, probably the last time before I start like moving around too much. I guess it counts that as sleep, even if I'm not fully asleep. And then it always says that I was waking up kind of later. Like, it shows times when I had light sleep, deep sleep, when I actually was waking up. So I know I woke up around 4 a.m. I know I went to sleep around, like, probably after 11:30. And then it says I woke up fully at 7:30 a.m. I know I was awake before 7:30 because I was texting somebody before 7:30, so I know I was up. But I must not have been, like, I don't know, maybe it considered it as like light sleep or something, and that I was like waking up a little bit later than that. So it shows a little about like maybe 7-ish hours of me sleeping, but it wasn't, the quality just was not there. It basically says I had like 2 hours of deep sleep and about 5 or so hours of not so deep sleep, with waking up and also waking up at like 4 a.m. So yeah, this is unfortunately going to be very scattered. I'm going to try my best to keep it on task. That's kind of the early rambling that I wanted to get out of the way. But I hope I'm not stumbling through this too badly, because I like the topic. I like, I just like it because it's very fascinating. So basically, I kept seeing this Joe Rogan thumbnail popping up, and I was like, that looks like the actor on King of Queens, the one who plays the wife. But I was kind of like avoiding it. I was like, it doesn't really look like her. It kind of does. Can't really tell fully. And then I was starting to think about that show. Now, I'm not too familiar with that show, but I have watched it, way back when I used to watch TV a lot. And it didn't really stick with me, mainly because, I like comedy. I like sitcom comedies. So, I used to watch King of Queens and Everybody Loves Raymond. Now, I like it because I like comedians. I like funny content. And so I kind of liked that aspect. But I kind of started finding the show it kind of bothered me a little bit because the actor, the one who plays the wife, I guess her name is Leah Remini, but I didn't know that till today. But the one who plays the wife, her character just never settled well with me. I don't know. I just never liked the way she treated her husband. It was a thing for me where I was just like, I don't know. And I'm kind of weird with like acting. I kind of think, I'm not 100% sure, but I kind of play with the thought of like, when people act, professionally act or whatever, are they kind of like revealing a potential that they have, right? Now, because all of us, we're all humans. We have certain capabilities to do things that, a lot of us would never really do. It's almost the same thing as like role playing, for example, in whatever way, sexual ways, or just like pretend other kind of like weird, like fantasy land things that people do when they're like a kid, and you're like, oh, like I see a dinosaur, like I'm in the forest and there's a dinosaur chasing me, like we need to run, like things like that, or whatever. But I've always kind of wondered, is acting something that people kind of tap into, like a type of personality or a type of character that could potentially be a part of themselves, because they're able to express themselves like that, and I know it's pretend, it shows, but it is kind of a question that I have. It is kind of an interesting thing, and I do kind of think that a little bit about acting. I have a really close friend that I have a lot of really people I grew up with. Mind you, I grew up in LA for the most part, so it wasn't uncommon to come across people who were into acting, who were into, even if it was like through church, were acting or like creating like plays and like in charge of like drama groups, and like it's very common in LA. It's very common, like like the entertainment industry just really spreads throughout the culture. And I knew a lot of people who were either trying to get into like video game, like graphic design, work on video games, work on commercials, work with athletes, work with not necessarily actors, but these are like the aspects of like society that are just easily available. When you live in LA, it's easy to get jobs in any aspect. Not easy to get jobs, but there are a lot of entertainment industry options. A lot of the companies are out here, from like music to music studios to like movie studios to whatever brands there are out there, right? And so I would see people that I knew very well, that I would talk to very often, that I knew since like during childhood even, and this was when I was younger, and they would be in these plays for the church or like the school or whatever, and they would, I would see how they would like act in the play and stuff and just get into this different character. And it kind of made me question, like, okay, I know this person really, really well. And then sometimes you would see them tap into this, complete different personality where they would play this complete different, scenario out. Everything about them would change, and it would just be like, the people who were really good at acting would literally be someone else at the time while they were acting, right? And so I kind of, when I watch certain stuff, just in general, when I saw her character initially, this is like years and years ago, when I initially saw her character on King of Queens, I never gravitated towards the show too much because I just couldn't stand that, she was treating her husband like the way she was. Like, I know, like, yeah, she's a hothead in the show, and like, but for me it was almost like bordering like abusive, just disrespectful. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, because he's the man, she has to like treat her as she has to treat him a certain way. That's not what I mean by respect. I just mean, like, I can't imagine anybody who loves their spouse actually treating them that way, like so routinely bad. But I just guess maybe that was just something in me. I don't know. I don't think anyone else complains about that show, but that was, to me, I was like, ugh, like there's something that felt a little like icky about it, like kind of because of maybe my beliefs or question of my beliefs about actors, and then just kind of like that character. So I never really went into like her kind of like background or anything. So when I saw the Joe Rogan thumbnail that looked like it was her, I was like, I didn't really like her character in the first place. So and I kind of question not just her. I'm thinking most actors, and I'm kind of thinking, like, I don't know, like, for people to be able to kind of play out those dynamics. I guess it's in a healthy way because, it's consensual and they're adults and it's scripted, and, everyone knows the script and they're saying, yes, I want to, be fake treated this way by my fake wife on this fake show, but it's still, I don't know, like, not just that show. I kind of just feel that way about most shows, but that one in particular kind of stood out for me a little bit, because I'd never really seen a lot of shows like that, but I thought it was a little weird, how she I don't know, I just didn't like it. And so basically I was kind of like, I don't know if it is her, because it was a thumbnail, and I was like, I couldn't really tell if it was her, but something about it, I was like, it's probably that lady. And then, eventually I click on it because I go through all the other ones I want to watch, and I'm like, okay, well, this one keeps getting recommended, so I click on it, and it's this whole episode about, about her, Leah Remini, talking about her life, when she was a Scientologist. And so this is my first real exposure to the religion of Scientology. Now, I always thought, just like I mentioned, I never heard hardly anything about it until now. But there was always this aspect of LA, Hollywood, entertainment industry, money, and then this religion, like something, my mind did go there. My mind did know or learn of or know of, something related to money and this religion. And I don't know what, but there was something about that where I was like, I wonder what this religion's all about. And so I never really delved into it because I was like, I really don't know what it is at all. But then she starts describing it. So basically, as someone who's newly coming across this religious information, and then recently, studying about like cults and things like that, I was curious. So I'm about to spoil the whole thing if you guys haven't already watched it. So, if you don't really want to hear my, recounting of what I watched, or some of what I watched, then maybe you'll just, go watch it for yourself before you finish listening to this. But definitely a spoiler alert here. So I start watching this, and at the very beginning, I still can't tell if it's her. And then, after the introductions and everything, I'm like, oh, it's her, And I didn't even know, like, what they really were going to talk about. And then they're like, oh, we're going to talk about, like, Scientology and and her, experience with being a part of that religion and then getting out of it. And the differences between religions and cults, and that they would classify Scientology as a cult. And, so basically her general story, it was only almost a 2-hour episode. I'm not going to take 2 hours to explain this, but basically, she was young, in a Catholic family originally, with her father and mother, and I think she had at least one sibling, and they would go maybe on Easter or Christmas, but they weren't like a church going Catholic family, and otherwise she was taught about kind of Catholic beliefs in the house, and like kind of Italian American upbringing in New York, and I think eventually the mom, I guess there was a divorce, and then the mom, during that time of the divorce, I don't know if it was through the first stepfather that the mom found out about Scientology, and I don't remember if they were living in Florida at this time, but it was Leah, her sister, the mom, and this stepdad who brought them into Scientology, and the stepdad left the religion, and then they kind of were open to this religion, and she explains it as like a pay-as-you-go system. So there's like rankings where you start low, and you work your way up. And you basically, through financially contributing and going there every day and not making, mistakes or getting too many write-ups, because people can write you up for not following the beliefs, and you can write up others for not following the beliefs, and then there might be consequences to those write-ups once they get reviewed in some kind of process that I don't really fully understand yet. But it seems like there's this guy, L. Ron Hubbard, who's basically a science fiction writer. I just checked on Audible and was scrolling for ages, and I was like, where's the end of these books? Like, there's so many books on there, and I was like, I've never been on, just typing in somebody's name, and that much content comes up just on Audible. It's like Audible doesn't usually even have everybody's full collection of every single book that they've ever written. Like, for some writers it does, but for some authors it's like you can't find everything. If you're into books, like, you'll notice it's like, oh, like, there's this book that I literally have on my shelf that I don't see like on Audible. But I'm talking like sci-fi, whatever. But yeah, so they have all these books. Some of them are repeats, and I was just like, wow, like, this is fascinating. This guy wrote so much sci-fi, but he has like some real books, I guess real, like, towards Scientology real, that, it seems like he was very well versed in cults, brainwashing, and mostly those propaganda techniques. Like, he seems like he was very skilled and was able to create this whole religious program in that way, where it almost sounds like, I mean, not I don't want to make light of North Korea or compare anybody's situation. Like, I don't think these people in Scientology are necessarily being like starved or like kept from leaving, as far as I know, which I don't really know, but maybe I don't know, maybe they are kept from leaving. But it sounds like just the part of it that where they talked about like who can report who, and then like who would things like that. Like, you hear about that when there are interviews of people who escaped from North Korea. They talk about that other people could report you doing things that were wrong, or like if someone else in your family gets caught doing something wrong, then there's some kind of penalty that might trickle down to you in some cases. And so it's like, I didn't hear them mention exactly that, but it kind of gave me that kind of vibe, as well as kind of like with some of these strict like Amish groups, where it's kind of like with the shunning, where it's like, oh, someone else in your family's doing something wrong, so now the rest of the family is kind of like almost on punishment of a form too. So that really stuck with me, and I was just like, wow, that's weird. That's just weird. Because I was expecting to hear, this religion that's like, okay, the Bible comes in, and you start talking about the Bible. Because usually when you hear the word church, you think Christianity. That's like the first thing you think. And, so I was thinking maybe it's related to like Christian Science. Which I don't really know much about Christian Science, other than what I've heard from about like one of the Metallica band members, about how he mentioned like that they don't believe in medicine, modern medicine and things like that. So I wasn't sure the real difference, but from what I heard, it doesn't sound like the Church of Scientology follows the Christian religion at all. Like, it doesn't sound related. It seems like they have this guy, L. Ron Hubbard. He has writings. Now, they're not necessarily taking from his sci-fi writings. They're not basing their beliefs necessarily on that. They're basing their beliefs on these doctrines that he's written, and there's access to some of these doctrines and things. You can find them, like I said, Audible. You can Google search them. He's got all this content where it's basically, it sounds like she was like taught to, go and learn all this material, and they drill you and quiz you. And mind you, she said she was, she stopped going to, routine, mandatory school. You know how the state like makes you go to school, like you can't just not go to school as a kid. I guess they made it sound like she was going to some kind of religious Scientology school, but instead, they were studying, but they were studying these L. Ron Hubbard doctrines, and they would like work, like they would actually work. I think she mentioned working for like an insurance company, or some people clean and like do, like these are like younger people. And then she mentioned somewhere else that I don't think they do like the, kids aren't held to those standards anymore, I don't think. But I don't know. I mean, she mentioned when she was like in 8th grade, she was working and, didn't go to like formal school. And, the family filled out paperwork, kind of similar to how if somebody was like homeschooling their kid or something like that, how they would do that. And so, nobody was really alerted to, these kids aren't even going to school, and they were kind of kept, doing the religious things. And the religion, I don't think she mentioned this in Joe Rogan's. I think it was in a different video interview where she was talking about, this was like her teen years or so. Her and her sister lived in like on some of the Christian Scientist property, kind of dorm style. She said the dorms were pretty ratty, like, run down, roaches, that kind of thing. But they were like motel that were used for like dorms where the kids were living with other kids. It wasn't like a school site where you have like staff there, from what she explained. And it seems like, they still had to go do what they needed for the work and for the, Christian Science, not Christian Science, for the Scientology, religion. They would go and, she was mentioning, she would go every day. Like, I don't know at what point in her life she started going every day, but I think as an adult she was going every day. So she was mentioning when she was working on the set of King of Queens, when she was working acting as the wife on that show, she would go afterwards and go put in some hours at the Scientology places that she needed to be at. And she mentioned, it would be hard for people to take vacations if you're a part of that religion and you're going in every day, because, you'd have to make up the time. So she said when her acting schedule, kind of was at like various times, depending when those times were, she would choose to work at the Scientology locations as well. I'm not too clear what she was doing. I'm not sure if that's the time period. It sounded like when she was younger, that's the time period she was learning and being indoctrinated, and about like everything, what it means. They would quiz you, drill you, test you on like the meanings of these L. Ron Hubbard writings. And so when it came to the rules, everybody knew the rules clearly, by a certain age, because you're young and you're studying this, and you're not going to a mainstream school. You're not going, to a mainstream church. You're basically everyday, your life is mostly exposure to Scientology, And then the time that you do spend outside of that, your viewpoint is like all these people are lost. Scientology is, I guess the whole purpose that people join is because they're taught that they're the ones that are gonna be saving the planet, the people on the planet, because they're the stuff that they do when they go in every day, all the learning that they do and the tasks that they do and those types of things are, making the world better. Or like, say she gave an example elsewhere where she said, like, if you're driving down the street and there's like a person who you see, stranded in a car, like you would stop and like ask them if they need any help, like, like, so there were good deeds involved, like they did do good deeds. But it sounds to me like the majority of your social life is so taken over by all the Scientology, activities, that when would you really have energy to have another life outside of that? Other than like if you're working like a mainstream job. And so, yeah, I was kind of looking at that like, wow, that's pretty different. Because I know, even, being raised Adventist, we had a lot of activities and things. And, the more I was involved in the church with like even just the social stuff, if it was just basic social stuff, most of the time I went to private school before high school, but then, I finished up 11 and 12 at a public school. And then after that, I went to colleges and universities that were public. So I, and not religious. And so, when I was younger and into church, often, I can't really imagine having a life where it was like, if I had to separate it out from my church life from other, social life, there's really limited time for that, honestly. And I wasn't even there every single day. Like I was for school, sports league, and church. But I mean, that would mean you'd have to make time outside of those times to spend more time with other friends. And I did, because I wasn't bound by, I have to hang out with my religious friends after school. I could hang out with any friends after school, or even when I wasn't going to like private school anymore and I was at a public school, I could choose if after church I wanted to go out with my other friends, or if I didn't want to do the Sabbath stuff on Friday nights necessarily, and instead wanted to go out with my college friends. But I did have a point in my life where it was kind of a little bit conflicting, because, Friday night people want to go out, so it's like, you're usually starting to go out 6, 7 p.m. or so on a Friday night, because you're usually coming out of school or coming out of work or whatever. That's common that people want to go out. And then if usually, the Adventist church has a Friday night sundown type of event. A lot of churches that are very social will have some option of something Friday night. And so usually you can't do both. Usually you have to maybe not go to Vespers or Bible study or church or prayer group or praise team practice or whatever it is. You can't do both consistently. And so it did make it a little hard for me socially to get to know people in college. Even though I still had a good balance with it. Like, people knew we could still hang out Saturday nights or Sunday or sometimes after school. So it's not like I was completely, detached. But I can't even imagine if I had a religion that was telling me that I had to go every day to go do their things. And then, how would you really, create a separate life outside of that? And then you also, don't really talk to that many people about your religion too. So like, the weird thing about Adventism is, like, with Adventism, most of the time people eventually kind of start asking you questions like, oh, like, why don't you ever go out on this night or at this time, or on this day, or, what are you doing? People want to know about your life, and then you kind of just openly tell them, what you're doing, and then they realize, oh, there's all this stuff that you're different on, from the mainstream society because of your religion, but it's not something that you're told, like, don't talk about it or don't mention it or whatever. Like, you just talk about it to whoever. I was never one to, like, necessarily want to, like, convert people. I was more like, I didn't really think people were lost. I never really saw that. I just saw that, there was some lifestyle balance that the church really could create, and I felt like that was always a benefit, that people could kind of learn about, like, nutrition, and learn about exercise, and learn about, things that maybe if they were never taught that kind of stuff, like, learn about, like, not being too heavy into any kind of substances, including caffeine, learning about, meat diets versus non-meat diets. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's, like, beneficial to just learn about, that you probably wouldn't always be learning about mainstream. If you're around people who are doing certain things mainstream, you wouldn't really, like, I'm not judging people on it, but things like, smoking cigarettes, or, going out and maybe drinking, like, too much, or, not sleeping enough because of caffeine, or eating, like, really, poor diet, never getting any exercise. I'm talking about, like, the basic of the basics, never taking days off from work, or, like, having a period of every week even where you have, like, a restful time, to recover at least once a week. And that's asking a lot for some people too. It's like once a week seems like a lot for some people. And so things like that, where it's like, yeah, we were taught, those are like the basic things. Even if you take the religion fully out of it, we were taught, about this kind of lifestyle balance type of stuff. And so we kind of knew what it would look like if you were following the religion. Usually your life would be generally healthier if you were following it. It might not be, for me, it wasn't, like, psychologically healthier, but it was physically a lot healthier, because I was, like, physically doing things, just to keep my life kind of in balance and everything. So I did notice that benefit for sure. And I didn't think that I would be, like, condemned to hell if I didn't, if I ate pork in my ramen, or if I ate bacon on my Grand Slam or whatever. Like, I never really thought it was, like, a salvation issue, but I know some people did. And it was kind of almost taught, we were usually taught, you're not saved by your works, but then there's this whole religion about, like, works. It's like, it's preferred, it's better for your life, but it's not necessarily going to save you, but you should still do it. It's kind of like that. But I do think some people did kind of feel like, if I do this, you feel a little guilty. Like, I did have some guilt about, like, if I did or didn't do certain things on the Sabbath, or if I did or didn't go to church, or if I did or didn't eat certain things. There was some guilt around it, but also I would also challenge the guilt, and I would be like, why do I feel guilty about this if I don't really think it's wrong? I would pretty much just do it anyways. Like, I didn't really care. Like, the guilt wasn't that strong, because I didn't really think it was that big of a deal, because it's not like I was treating anybody bad just because I was eating bacon or whatever. Like, it wasn't making me, like, worse of a person. And I could kind of think for myself too, and I was around enough other types of people where I could see them, around me, and I would, notice, just how different people live their lives, and how I was like, these people aren't, like, bad, they just have different lives. Like, they just believe differently and do different things. It doesn't make them bad or lost, or, have some kind of problem just because they're from some other religion and they've been misled or whatever. So a lot of religions teach this kind of stuff. And Scientology seems to take it to another level, where it's like you're almost being, like, harassed and interrogated and taught these, you're being brainwashed, and if you leave or become like a certain like negatively labeled person, that could risk you of your Scientology friends and family not being able to still be in contact with you. So yeah, I found all that fascinating, and I really don't know what to do with it. I really don't. It's like just fascinating, to say the least. I found it to be interesting content, very interesting material. Something that I did find kind of funny. She seemed like she was trying to be serious sometimes, and Joe Rogan didn't. Like, he was kind of like joking and laughing, and it's kind of funny though, because she's like she's considered as like a comedian, but I don't know, like it was something I never would have guessed, that's what Scientology has in it, that it's not even based on mainstream religious culture. It's like its whole other thing that was like created by some guy, and basically he's a sci-fi author, and I don't know what his other roles are, but I mean, apparently he founded a whole church, and there's hierarchies, and I think there's like punishment centers. It sounds like there's like interrogations and like punishment and a lot of secrecy, and people telling you how to think, and like it's basically a very in-depth brainwashing, and it's so insulated. It seems like they even like reach out to local police officers. They have like a good standing with them, maybe some lawyers, some authority figures. Now, I'm not saying they're paying their bills or anything, but they're, they have a, they have a, what do you call it? Basically these, people have a, like, I don't think they'd be fully protected by police, but it's like, well, if you're involved with the LAPD and your religion is contributing to the LAPD, like some children's fund thing for charity, then that is a little bit of like, at least you've paid money for something. There is a little bit of money attached. And they are self-sufficient, considering that, people are paying. So it's like when they have all these actors and stuff, it sounds like that's how they're kind of like everyone's paying to get to different levels. It's non-refundable payments that you're making. I don't know how the financial system works, but it sounds like people have given like millions upon millions of dollars. So you're already like invested, financially. She mentioned something about some people who do some type of work where they live on the sites. I don't know what the role of these people are, but they have some kind of standing in Scientology where they work at certain sites, and they board there, they live there, and they're paid $15 a week. I believe the Church of Scientology, I think she said they're tax exempt, and I think she said they have a net worth of $3 billion. Is that the right number? I could be mixing it up with the 3 billion or whatever billion year contract that they sign. Like, I think she mentioned that when she was younger, or when people first join, they sign a contract. It's like a I don't know if it was 1 billion years or 3 billion years that they're held to these contracts. So I can't remember now if that's the net worth of the church or what. I never really knew anything about it. It's a little disturbing. It's kind of weird too, because I don't remember exactly where it is in LA. I mean, I can definitely look it up, but I've literally walked past it even before, like, I know of it, but I wasn't ever, like, looking into it too much. But it's weird. I always just thought it was like a Bible-based kind of church. I just assumed, maybe it's more modern. Maybe it has, like, not so many, like, beliefs about, like, ancient things, but maybe it has more, like, modern ideas about, like, how certain modern life paths, like with work and school, like how people can be Christians within modern society. That's kind of what I assumed it was. I had no idea that it had nothing to do with Christianity. So it's I was just assuming based on the name, because a lot of the names have something to do with the actual church itself. And so yeah, I found it really interesting. Yeah, it's not a Christian church at all. And it sounds like the people who are a part of it, they would be very unlikely to leave it after investing money, emotions, time, energy, effort. Moving up in ranks is like a goal that they're so focused on, and also not having so much time or energy or ability to really, even depending what your role looks like, if you're living on one of those sites, you're not really going to have times where you can, like, go out and be socializing with other people in mainstream America. Like, where, when are you going to do that? And, like, if somebody else sees you doing that or hears you talking bad about the church, you can get written up and punished for it. So it's kind of like, you probably wouldn't likely say the negative thing. Like, it kind of almost teaches you to think through the lens of L. Ron Hubbard's doctrines. It doesn't really teach you to think for yourself. It teaches you to question your own thought processes. And then it routinely lies to you at the different levels that you get to. You're being told more and more lies as you're given more and more responsibility, and reaching higher and higher levels. There's more investment on your part. It's weird, and then I start thinking about other things in society, like mainstream work and mainstream schools, and it's kind of like there is a bit of that rat race that kind of always goes on, but this is different, and like I've even talked about the religion I grew up in. That's different, this isn't the same type of thing where it's like you're strategically, it sounds like L. Ron Hubbard strategically created an environment where you are not likely to reach out to others wouldn't be likely to reach out to you, and you wouldn't be likely to find a path out of it or care to. Yes, some people do, but it doesn't sound like people are flocking out of it, because you're being taught in a different way. And there was this device where it's like they're holding these, there's like a meter that looks like, I don't know, reminds me of those like old, like little computer type of toys that you used to have as a kid, just like a larger version that's maybe as big as like a It seemed maybe like the size of like a binder, like a trapper keeper, like back when you were like young, but it wasn't that shape. It was like kind of almost like a rounded shape, but about that size, maybe about that thickness, of a device that's connected with the wire that comes out to connect to these two metal. I mean, Joe Rogan called them cans. They look a little thinner than cans. They look maybe like thinner than your typical cans. They look like more like rod, like a thick, somewhere between a really fat, thick silver rod and a thin can, like kind of like that. And then you hold on to these two handles, and the meter shows when you have a thought, like it kind of registers that you're having like a thought, and then you're trained on one end to talk to people about those thoughts, and they can open up to you about it, and it's supposed to help people with their trauma, and you're supposed to help people kind of dive into whatever those thoughts are that come up when the meter spikes. And then it sounds like they use that maybe in an interrogation process as well. I can't really tell. That's how they do their questioning when you're in trouble, to kind of ask you, what do the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard say? And it sounds like they're very, consistent with at least from what I gathered, it sounds like breaking the rules there's a consistent method of telling if you're in line or out of line with the rules. It sounds like the rules are clear as night and day. They just go against human nature, so you're not going to follow them. So naturally you're going to be breaking all these rules, and then you're naturally going to have to go through this process of being re-taught and reviewed about the thing that you broke the rule about, and you have an incentive because you're trying to go higher, so you don't want to be breaking the rules. It sounds like there's financial penalties. It sounds like there's possibly demotion penalties, and so you're putting in your time, your effort, your blood, sweat, and tears outside of whatever you do. Like, if you don't work at this Scientology, if you don't work there permanently and aren't being housed there permanently, then you have to have another type of job, and you'd likely have to have a better type of job, because you have to have energy to be going into this Scientology site every day, and you'd have to have flexibility to do that. Your mental health has to be in good enough order for you to be able to be just like doing a lot, often busy a lot, but your mind, while you're there, you're being taught and surrounded by all these different things, and so you don't really have a lot of time away from it. And when you do, I don't know if it's really a significant amount of time for the average person in that religion. Like, say if you did take a week from Scientology to go to Hawaii, or take a trip for a week for, I don't even know if they celebrate Christmas, but say if you have half of your family that does celebrate Christmas, and you take like the 2 weeks between Christmas, or like you take a 2 week like Christmas between Christmas and well, I guess it's less than 2 weeks, but you take the 1 week and then a second week, so say you take 2 weeks off, you'd have to make that time up. And so you would have to go to the Scientology locations to put in more time out of the time, to put in more time. And so I don't know, this is all just fascinating. It's pretty, I don't know, it's interesting to me. I don't know what L. Ron Hubbard's motive was for all this? Maybe money. I mean, maybe the money goes up, right? Maybe. But it also seems like they catch people at vulnerable points in their lives, or even as youth. And once you get into it, if you're not knowledgeable of what cults look like, or if you're not used to critically thinking about things, challenging things, just looking around your surroundings and, balancing your life out, I don't think that sounds like a balanced lifestyle to be, not ever having a break, and not necessarily maybe like a break from your religion, but I mean, you really don't get a break. And it sounds like the religion itself is work, and you don't ever really get a break from it. Like, I wonder how it was during COVID, during the pandemic, when people had to shelter in place. Like, did they change the rules or anything? Where people maybe could or couldn't come in, or does the government look the other way on that kind of stuff? Like, I wonder. And I also wonder why the government doesn't seem to investigate this. I mean, they basically seem like they lie. When people accuse them, they lie and go after them and try to say, this person is trying to make us look bad, this person's crazy and stupid, and they lie about them. So I don't really know. Like, it's not something I'm used to hearing about. So this is just weird. Honestly, it's a weird it's weird. Like, I usually wonder why people stay with things when it's not working for them. I mean, I'm one of those people that does that, I did it with the religion. I did it with, a house environment, like there's usually some benefit that you can still get out of something. I'm not saying like people need to stay in like abusive situations. I'm just saying, like, usually there's something beneficial that you see, that you're focused your eyes on, that seems more beneficial than leaving. That's the main thing I can think about. But also, if you think about, the amount of control, I mean, if you're paying these people, and I don't know what percentage of your money they would have, or if you live in one of their sites, like, how would you even get out to apply for work and start living somewhere else? I mean, it's like, you'd have to have either like homelessness support services to get you out of there, and then you'd start living in like shelters while you're trying to do all this. And that's assuming that you know the system well enough that you can independently get yourself out. And like I said, nobody's likely reaching out to these people. I mean, there's nobody standing outside of these buildings with like a megaphone just being like, everybody come out, like you're being brainwashed. This is, you're just basically taking all your money and giving it to these liars who are running this place. But I mean, I feel like I might feel better about it if there wasn't that like no refund policy. I might feel better about it. I mean, I'm not trying to make light of it, but there's always going to be the, people who are molesting people and lying and embezzling money, and like in any kind of religion or cult type group. Unfortunately, anything where you have like power positions, you're gonna have, that type of predatorial person around. I'm not saying every church has predatorial people or every religion specifically, but just when there's leadership involved in general, not every leader is trying to do good by someone who's under them. I think the best leaders know that everyone is their equal. That's the best leader. Any leader who doesn't know that or doesn't treat people that way, I feel like they have bad intentions. That's kind of how I see it. Because I do think, everyone's, equal. I do think, if people are creating crimes against other humans and things, like, that's not good. But, I do think everyone inherently is equal, right? Uh, so yeah, I do see how, it would be really hard to get out of that situation. And it sounds like with her being a celebrity, I'm not saying it was easier on her, because she's definitely in the public eye. So that probably was definitely harder. But also, it's like, when you think of it, she is exposed to the entertainment industry. She is exposed to other people who are maybe in powerful positions that are outside of that religion. She is, she had another life that wasn't that. Like, when she was younger, she was young, but I mean, she did have another religion and another, type of upbringing before her mother was with the, stepfather that introduced them to Scientology, and before she was, like, involved in Scientology and maybe signed on the agreements to be in the church and stuff. It sounds like that was a whole process. And also, she's a wealthy woman. Like, I'm not trying to, like, say anything that her life was, like, easier or, like, anything like that. I'm just saying, like, her position is a little different than some other people's positions, because, it maybe some of that led her a better ability to be able to get out, because she had money. I mean, she, that gave her options. I mean, it sounds like it was a terrible process that, because she was in the spotlight, they were able to fuel the situation of her leaving that church and make her feel worse. And there's a lot of manipulation and slander against her, and people trying to make her feel like she's, like, losing her mind and all this kind of stuff, like, and a lot of unfairness that it sounds like she experienced. And there's a lot of stuff about, like, the whole Tom Cruise thing. I'm not even gonna go into all that. It's like a whole lot of, like, I was mostly interested in the religion part. I do find that part to be, it's if you want to listen to that too, that's I'm not going to talk about it much, but it did seem to play a major role in her deciding to leave the church. The situation that happened at the Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes wedding in Italy. But I don't really know. I don't really know too much about them otherwise. But yeah, I just think it's fascinating to me. That kind of stuff interests me. I'm definitely curious to learn more about it. I've also been, like, learning about, like, the origins of Freemasonry, so that's another thing, that this weekend has been coming up a little. But yeah, I think, there's so many concepts that can be touched on with that type of a religion. Like, like, I'm not here to say that, that the people themselves who are being duped into doing this stuff, I'm not here to talk wrongly about them, but there is definitely some people who are in powerful positions that seem to be doing wrong, knowing that they're doing wrong, manipulating people. I don't understand. I don't really understand how. I've never heard of a religion like this. And that's saying something because I like to study all types of religions, right? Like, there are definitely a lot of them that I don't know a lot about, but this is one that definitely fell beneath my radar, that I never really heard details about it. And you'd think someone like me who actively goes through looking at religious stuff, cultural stuff, I'm not like distanced from like movies. Like, I love movies. I watch a lot of movies. Now, I don't really watch a lot of interviews about actors, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts and do come across a lot of public people and their roles in society. But it doesn't tend to be actors, more so musicians, not so much actors, like more like athletes, musicians, scientists, different, like, I'd say the actors that I have paid some more attention to are usually the ones on casts of those kind of like those alien shows, where they're like ancient aliens type of stuff, or like other type of stuff like that. I've kind of I didn't do any deep dives, but I've kind of come across a little bit of like additional material about those types of people. But I don't know if I would call them actors if they're trained to be like they're scientists and historians, and they just happen to be in the public eye. I don't know if I would call that the same thing, because they're not necessarily, like, maybe there are scripts and stuff involved, but it sounds like they're going more on the reality show, or like the history kind of show, kind of, they have a theory that they go with, and they search for evidence within that theory. You don't usually see a lot of shows that they're sitting there disproving exactly what they're trying to talk about. Like, usually it's one-sided, and they're usually telling you all the information for whatever theory, like, who built the pyramids in Egypt. Like, usually if you listen to those types of shows, they're telling you the information for why they think it was this versus that. They kind of shape your mind a bit with the ideas. They don't leave you, they kind of leave you hanging, but they don't, it's usually not an open debate. And also, usually when you watch those types of shows, pay attention. You'll notice something. You'll notice there is this aspect of them trying to captivate your attention. So they do this thing that drives me nuts, because, I like them. I would rather they get to the point, but they never get to the point. It's like, I can literally, watch an episode of something, walk away, do my laundry, start my workout, come back, and they're still asking the same questions like 45 minutes later. And it's like, we never even got to the point of this, we never got to the main purpose of whatever the heck we were talking about. Like, I noticed that a lot, time and time again. I definitely noticed that. So that's something that I've, noticed, with those shows, is that they give you like a little bit of information. The ones I like the most are when they're interviewing like professionals, like different, like museum professionals or that kind of stuff, where they're literally asking them direct questions about certain things. The ones I don't like is where like every potential solution ends up in 5 other questions, and then it's like, it isn't that life, right? But it's like, I go to those shows because I'm like, I think maybe they'll have answers. They seem like they have some kind of answers, and it's just like, now we have 80 more questions after watching this. I feel like I got nowhere, but I still come back and watch the content. I don't really care. I like it. I like thought-provoking content, but anything that I feel like, yes, that type of content is definitely trying to sway you. It's like, okay, like, these might seem like answers, but we're swaying you towards this. Media is like that. um, there is this kind of also like censorship, even though we're told there's not. There is a form of censorship that I think everyone knows their line, the line that they can't cross in whatever type of thing that they're doing in media, where they know they will get in trouble if they cross that line. So it's not really freedom of speech. I know those lines. When I'm talking on here, there's clearly stuff that I'm not going to be just like saying. I'm not trying to get under some weird investigation or like have any kind of anybody showing up on my doorstep. Like, I care about my safety. I'm not trying to get like killed by somebody, but it's like that kind of stuff does exist. Like, we all know that it exists. We can't just, look what happened to Snowden. He had to flee the country for telling something that we all kind of knew to some extent was the truth. Yes, he was risking his life, and I'm glad that he leaked the info, but also it's like we all kind of knew that too, but he really confirmed it. And it's kind of weird. It's like, how can somebody confirm something that we already kind of knew and they're still in trouble? Like, their life is still at risk, even though we all kind of knew this. So, I do, think about, how shows do kind of guide you to think in certain ways. They don't really try to guide you to some other thing. Like a lot of shows are kind of capturing more of the ideas lately about what do you call it? What do you call it? Like ideas that are about like aliens and those types of things. You don't really see a lot of shows going in the direction of God or religion too much. It's kind of been phased out of the conversation. I've kind of noticed that. Which, it is what it is, whatever. I don't, whatever. Like, I like to, fill my mind with what I feel like I want my mind to be filled with. That's the thing that I don't really like about television, but being in a different house now where there is a TV in the living room, and I like watching sports, and then that leads to, okay, well, maybe there's some stuff recorded. My parents will record like any of the alien stuff because they know I might watch it. So on occasion I'll sit and I'll watch it, and I probably watched more TV this summer than I've watched combined like the last decade. Like, seriously. And I'm not even just sitting there every day like watching it. Like, I don't watch it every day. If I do, when it comes to ads and commercials and stuff, I usually just silence it, but you can still see it, but I try not to really watch the commercials or like, I'm not really interested in that. But I do like watching a good game. I'm a Galaxy fan. I like the Dodgers. I like LA teams, and so it's nice being in LA again. And then now there's all these teams. When I was in San Diego, I was like, okay, they don't really have hardly any like real like major league teams. Now they just have baseball, and otherwise, there's some other stuff, but it's not like big, easy to find the games on TV or anything. So, and I'm from LA anyway, so I would always just watch I was raised in LA. I wasn't born in LA, but yeah, I've always just gravitated towards LA teams. I like Missouri teams too. I like US teams. I like Mexico teams, Brazil teams, Japan, New Zealand. Usually just teams where I know people from. I tend to like those teams. And so I like to watch, games from those teams a lot of times. But yeah, it's it's weird. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's all nuts. Um, you know, the stuff that I learned, I'm just, shocked. I'm pretty shocked. And I do find it interesting that it's not happening. Like, I'm not like bashing the Amish, but I'm saying, like, the Amish are out in the countrysides usually. They're usually away from society and not, like, yeah, they can be integrated in the mainstream, but overall they're not living like in New York high rises, you know what I mean? Versus, people in Scientology, they are, they're living in major cities and holding other jobs and interacting with other people and still, attached to this religion. And there really is a fine line. People do take advantage of power, not all of them, but there are definitely some who do. And it's just weird. This whole thing was weird to learn about, you guys. Like, I'm glad I learned about it, but I literally just started recording when I was done watching this stuff. Like, I haven't had a lot of time to really wrap my head really fully around it. So, it's it's weird to me. I'm glad that I did click the thumbnail and did find out about this lady's life, that I've been literally avoiding her content, like, just because of the character that she plays in a show. And I don't even know her personality, but I was just thinking, like, I just didn't like the character at all. And I don't know why, because usually if I don't like somebody's character in a show, that doesn't really sway the other content that I would be likely to come across of theirs. Like, I mean, there are plenty of shows where people play the bad guy. Like, for example, in The Sopranos, Tony Soprano, I mean, he's a very complex character. They all are. But, I mean, he's a mafia boss, He's a mob boss. Like, he's not, like... Yes, he does have good qualities in the show, but, I mean, he's a professional killer. And, there's a lot of shows like that where it's like, yeah, there's the complexity of the characters, but, there's a lot of characters that I can just easily watch. I'm like, I hate this character, and it doesn't usually make me not want to engage with any of the person's content. I think she's probably one of the only ones that I've ever kind of felt that way about, which is kind of weird, but... I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it is about her acting, but I've never, of all the shows and movies and things that I have seen in my life, definitely movies and Netflix stuff or whatever, I've come across a lot of characters that I did not like. So it is kind of interesting to me that there was, I don't know, like, there was something about her character that I just never even wanted to, like, really learn about her as a person, because of the way she was playing in that show. I was just like, oh, like, this is just not okay. And it's a popular show. Like, other people probably aren't seeing the same thing that I am, but there was always just something about it where I was just like, I don't like her. I just really don't like her, like, and I wonder what that was all about, because I don't know her. I don't know anything about her. Like, the only thing I know is now mostly what I learned. But otherwise, yeah, I knew that I didn't like her character, and that was mostly it. Like, I didn't think much past it. Like, it wasn't, like, I don't know, like, that's weird. I've never really had that, because I always see Joe Rogan's thumbnails, and I'm never, like, like, maybe I'll be like, I don't really care about this person, like, enough to watch, like, 2 hours about it. But, I mean, like, otherwise, usually I'm not like, oh, like, I don't like this person's character that they play, a pretend character. So I'm not gonna watch it. I don't know what that's all about. That's really weird. But it might have something to do with my kind of belief about acting with maybe some people, maybe not all actors, but there's something realistic about the way she acts in that show that I kind of just, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't really think that she, like, how do I say this? I kind of maybe got the impression that she's really like that, maybe, in real life. But I don't know. Like, I don't know. I never looked into it. I don't know her. I don't even want to, like, put that out there as how she is, because I really don't know. Because I honestly don't know how she is. There's 2 hours of her on Joe Rogan and maybe, like, another 30-40 minutes of her on another interview about her Troublemaker book. And I think she has an A&E series that's over, but I mean, it's out there, where she's interviewing other Christian, what I keep saying, Christian Science, other Scientologists. So I don't know, that's something that's weird to me. I don't know what that's all about, but I don't know. Sometimes I get this weird sense about people, and I can't tell if it's actually realistic or if it's just the way that I perceive something. But there was something about me where I was always just kind of like, I don't want to support anything that she's in. And I don't know what that was all about, but yeah, I never was gravitating toward her content for that reason. And when I thought it was her, I literally didn't even want to watch it, because I was like, I didn't even know it was about Scientology. I just didn't want to, like, really know about her life, really. So I thought, so I'm glad I clicked on it. But yeah, it's just super, I was not expecting that. I wasn't expecting that she was a part of all that. I could probably almost never expect that somebody is a part of all that. Like, I can kind of understand, like, with the Amish, that kind of makes more sense to me because they're so isolated. Like, there are exceptions. There are, like, some Amish do say that they went to, like, public schools. They weren't, like, fully integrated into the, school social life or anything. They still stayed with other Amish, but, like, they were, in a school system. They weren't just insulated in their communities all the time. Or even people who, like, work, RV factories, construction, different types of, like, factories and stuff, restaurants, whatever. Like, you're still, like, exposed to the mainstream, probably somewhat more than the people who are really isolated, like farmers who maybe don't always leave their properties or their communities unless they, like, need something from, like, a store or, like, somebody else where they have to travel to get it, supplies or whatever that may be. So I don't really, I always kind of understood that more, where it's like, where people were like, oh yeah, it was hard to get out of this abusive environment if they had an abusive experience, or like it was hard to get out of this, because, they're not in the middle of, like, a church in multiple buildings in the middle of LA, in the middle of New York, in the middle of Florida, in the middle of cities where it's like people pass these things on a regular basis. But it sounds like they're still insulated. And people are able to continue exploiting, these people as a religion. It sounds like the religion benefits financially from this because people are paying to move up to different levels. And so, man, this is like, I'm not like emotionally brokenhearted necessarily. I'm kind of just reporting on what I learned about, but it's just interesting to me because there's media out there, and they're exposed to it, but I guess in a way they're a little bit isolated from it because they would have to consider it a transgression, and like, I don't know if they'd have to pay a fine or do something if they were like to watch a movie or something, to go out of their way to like learn about somebody who was considered like a condemned member of that religion. You're not really supposed to be interacting with their content. So if the people leave and start like speaking out in interviews and stuff, then usually the people who are part of the church aren't likely going to be, watching those, because they'd have to pay a bit of a price for engaging with that content. And so I don't know if it's a bit of a price or a lot of a price, but there's some repercussions for them doing that. And she did bring up a point where she said, why, if you already are being told lies about these people, about how bad they are, how wrong they are, how you shouldn't contact them or else, like, why would you go out of your way when you know that there's a consequence for it, when you already think that they did something wrong and, the church is telling you the right information? Like, why would you? So that's another good point. It's like they keep you distanced from, other forms of information, so you can't really comfortably, inform yourself, and you already think that you have all the answers better than the majority of, like, you think your religion teaches you better than, maybe if you're listening to like psychology class or like something about brainwashing or abuse and like a course or something, if you were going to school, you would believe more so in your own religion. You wouldn't likely believe in what you were being taught, because you're so indoctrinated in that religion. So it's it is very interesting, because it seems like they're not just trying to find like the most vulnerable populations. It sounds like there are people in there that aren't necessarily vulnerable populations. They're wealthy, they're in the public eye. I'm not saying that people in those positions can't be, in vulnerable situations, but it doesn't sound like they're preying on that. It just sounds like people voluntarily sign up, and once you're integrated into this life, it's really hard to get out of it. The likelihood of you getting out of it is very slim as things are now. I mean, if there was like an investigation or something where people went in there and kind of like observed what was happening, that might shed light on some other things, but it doesn't sound like that's happening. They seem a bit too protected to have investigations happening. It sounds like they have some kind of like a prison system or something, or like a jail locked facility system where, I guess there's punishment, they mentioned like some form of like physical punishment too, where there were instances of people who would get maybe beaten, or before where they had some kind of a boat where they would throw people overboard the boat, and then I guess they'd let you back in it or whatever. I don't really know exactly what that was about, but it doesn't sound like there's no consequence for your actions either, and that would create a lot of fear. Like, I feel like in mainstream Christianity, you can, commit as much, wrong not keeping commandments and whatever and traditions as you want, but in your personal life, nobody's mainstream religions anyways, nobody's really knocking at your door about it. Nobody's really coming to you about it. Nobody's really you're very independent. You're not usually, unless it's a more extreme group, you're not usually being like, and I say usually, you're not usually being like threatened or punished. Usually it's like, you might have some accountability partner kind of thing, or there might be some shaming involved, or you confess it to somebody who's higher up, and other than that, there's usually not a severe consequence. I'm not talking about like fundamentalists or people who are taking things like super extreme. I just mean like mainstream Christianity these days. You kind of just do what you want. You can believe what you want, believe how you want, do things the way that you're gonna do them, but there's not really much that's gonna like, there's not like facilities where you're being locked and held and interrogated and re-indoctrinated and worked through like slave labor type of jobs where you're making $15 a week, and there's no like informant type of process where people are like ratting on each other, and other people reviewing that paperwork and like dishing out punishments. That isn't usually what mainstream Christian churches do. And this isn't even a Christian church, because they're not even involved in Christianity. They're involved with some complete other thing. I was very surprised on that. So, I mean, I said I wasn't going to make this 2 hours, and it's almost 2 hours. But, that's kind of my 2 cents on all of this. It's, yeah, I'm pretty shocked. I'm pretty, like, I don't even have, like, an explanation other than just, I'm pretty shocked about everything I heard. I didn't even talk about all of it, and I'm pretty shocked that something like this exists in the middle of major cities, where people aren't even actually fully isolated. All of them aren't fully isolated. So, to me, that's very interesting. But, alright, I need to cut this short, or just cut it now, because it's not short. I wasn't trying to go on for this long. Alright, thanks for listening.